Hey guys, it's Brad. If you're not familiar with my channel, I started my YouTube channel, Brad's World, about 3 years ago, and I talk a lot about real estate in Italy. I'm not just talking passively. I'm not talking like some guy that just grabbed a camera and thought it would be fun. I came to Italy in my retirement and made the decision to buy very nice investment-grade apartments to put on the nightly rental. Now, it's been 4 years now since I started the buying process and actually closed my first property. And I thought it was time to tell you guys my feelings, my thoughts on it, and where I stand today. So if you haven't guessed already, I am an American, and I had a real estate background. It wasn't my main business, but it was my side business, and I renovated 200 different apartments and homes in the United States over a 20-plus year period. So I had a pretty good experience in the business. But I was ready to move on from the United States, and I decided that Italy would be a great place for us to move to. We started looking for apartments to buy to transition out of our U.S. holdings into some properties here in Italy. We were looking to be able to show passive income, which, by the way, owning apartments does qualify as part of your ERV, your elective residency visa income. You are allowed to own rental properties. Many people are confused on this. It is passive income, but don't think that it's actually passive income. So we decided to purchase our apartments here, where I'm at now, in Montepulciano, in southern Tuscany. Now, this is actually one of the apartments that we bought. We felt that Montepulciano had a lot of good upside. It'd been discovered, but it wasn't a place like Lucca or Venice or Florence or Rome. It wasn't overrun with tourists, but it had a good backstory, and it seemed like it was getting more and more popular. But at the time, which is going back to about 2021, it still wasn't on everybody's radar. And we were between Lucca and Montepulciano. And we decided on Montepulciano. In retrospect, I probably should have chosen Lucca, because now, from a business standpoint, Lucca has gone completely insane. It is a beautiful city. It's one of everybody's most favorite cities in Italy. But we chose here, and we're happy that we did, because now our plans have changed. And that's what this video is going to dive into. What happened with us buying these real estate properties here that has so changed my idea of what I wanted to do in just 36 months? Now, we were lucky in a number of ways. One way we were lucky is that I have a good background in sniffing out quality value in real estate. That helped me a lot here. I will not lose money on anything that I bought in Italy, regardless of what my plans for it are. The other way I was lucky is that when we were buying, and now again, we're going back 3-4 years, when we were buying, the dollar was at a multi-year high against the euro. I was fortunate enough to even transfer money when the dollar was worth more than the euro. It went to like 0.97 to the dollar. That was an amazing stroke of luck, and it served me well now. We really feel like we've made Montepulciano our home. It's not just the business that we're doing here, but we have made this our personal home, and we're super happy. I can't tell you how happy we are to be living in Italy, to be retired here. And we'll go into the finances of it more in just a minute. But let me tell you, if you're thinking about moving here to stretch your dollar, to make your life more enriching without feeling like you have to work until the day you die, you're moving in the right direction by coming to Italy. So we moved here, we got our ERV, we moved here about 3 years ago now, and started running our rental business. In the meantime, we were looking for a villa that we would call our personal home, some sort of country house. But things started to change a little bit in my planning. Owning rental properties may not be as lucrative as you think it is. And I made one, I hate to say fatal flaw, but I was not willing to take leverage when I was buying the apartments. In other words, I didn't want to have loans. I am turning 60 years old very soon, too soon. And I didn't want to have loans that are going to last longer than I think I'm going to last. So I didn't want to invest with leverage into these properties. And that can greatly reduce your rate of return, your ROI, your return on investment. That being said, it is nice not having the loans. Where do we stand today? I have now divested myself 80% of the value of my rental holdings. 80%. How did I do that? I sold one of my properties about 8 months ago. It was a beautiful 2-bedroom, 2-bath apartment, of course, right here in the center of Montepulciano and the center of the Centro Storico. And I sold it to some friends of mine, some subscribers who had stayed in it and loved it. They were looking for a property that they could come and visit. They weren't really thinking of renting it out. And I basically sold it to them for what I had into it, my purchase price, and then we had done some renovations. We put in new bathrooms. We did calce, which is a type of treatment on the walls, which is very expensive to do. I did okay on the sale, getting rid of that property, only because I bought so right. When I bought the property, the euro was about at 103 or 104. When I sold it, it was about 116. That allowed me to walk away with a little bit, but basically I broke even on the property. The problem with it was this: no matter how much I brought in nightly rental fees, the amount of expenses here between taxes, the fees to get it rented, management fees, and then about 20 other expenses that you'll have basically ate up most of the rental income. In the third section of this video, I'll go into more detail about how the expenses are going to affect you, and not only the expenses, but all the reporting that you're going to have to do if you have even just one rental property here. Now, I mentioned that I'm in one of my properties right now, in one of the apartments that we bought as a rental. This is our jewel. This is our biggest, best apartment. It's an amazing, amazing 17th century apartment. We're here on the main street. We're ground level, which is very hard to find. And we have a beautiful terrace. We have over 2,000 square feet. There's beautiful frescoes. We just finished our kitchen. I'm sure I'm putting in a video right here of it. It's Oli's dream kitchen, her dream stove. She's wanted for so many years. We took this off the rental market because even though we were making 6 figures on the rental income, gross rental income on this property, it still didn't make it worth it for us to have it rented out. We decided, after not being able to find a property that we liked for 3 or 4 years now, everything keeps falling through, and that's a whole subject for another video. But there's so many problems on the large houses here that haven't been on the market for a while, which is what we were looking for, that it just became not any fun anymore for us looking. And I did the math and I told Oli, let's just take over this apartment that I'm in right now and call this our home. And that's what we've done. So just by selling one and then taking over this one and taking it off the rental market, we have now reduced 80% of our rental income properties. So that's the state of things. We live in this unit now. We've completely sold one, and we have 2 other units that we're still renting. One thing you need to keep in mind, by the way, when you're buying property in Italy, is you have capital gains at 26% for the first 5 years that you own a property. After 5 years, you pay 0 capital gains. When you're selling a property here, you can only use against your capital gains increase the amount that you paid for the property plus the fees that you paid to close the property. But if you put a couple $100,000 in remodeling, you cannot write that off. You will pay capital gains even on the money you spent. There is a way to get a lawyer and the notary involved and maybe reverse that for some items and you'll be able to deduct them off yours, but the new buyer will have to sign away rights to be able to deduct those things in the future. But basically, for 5 years, your hands are tied when you buy a property in Italy regarding capital gains. Now, I said I wanted to address the elephant in the room, the big problem that a lot of people have with properties being on Airbnb. And please keep in mind, Airbnb is like saying aspirin. It's a generic term for nightly rentals. There are hundreds and hundreds of websites that promote nightly rentals for other people. Booking.com is actually 3 times as big for us as Airbnb was. And luckily for me, I have Brad's World, because every month I could put on advertisements inside my own videos and get 200,000 to 300,000 views promoting our nightly rentals. That saved us a ton of money in fees. It's very expensive. We'll talk about that in the next section. We'd like to invite you to come and stay with us in Montepulciano in one of our great 17th century apartments. Each apartment has been remodeled to exacting standards and includes everything you need for a wonderful vacation. Click the QR code or go to TuscanPalace.com and we'll see you in Montepulciano soon. Yes, in cities like, let's just say in Italy, Venice, Florence, Rome, maybe Lucca, the quantity of Airbnb nightly rental type properties is probably skewing somewhat the rental market. You come to a town like Montepulciano where I live, all the properties that I bought were not inhabited as long-term rentals or even family homes. This home had not been lived in for over 4 years when I bought it, just sitting here empty. Another property that we had never even been a rental or even a guest room before. We turned it into that. So there's a lot of properties here in Montepulciano that are still vacant. If it weren't in a town like Montepulciano, if it weren't for all the nightly rental properties, there would be so many empty, vacant properties because you cannot afford to take one of these properties here, fix it up, and then rent it on a long-term basis for a small amount of money. I have another video coming on either tonight or next weekend that talks about a €400 a month rental here in Montepulciano. And the gentleman that took us to his house to see it didn't have a hard time finding it. He put the word out and he found the house. I could walk you around town any day of the week and show you tons and tons of still empty buildings, even in a city like Montepulciano that is so fabulously popular right now. The problem is the economics of making things worthwhile to turn into a nice property. And I can tell you that the main fault isn't with property owners converting things into Airbnbs. This is a supply and demand thing. The problem lies with the national governments, the city governments that are promoting tourism, that are creating festivals, that are bringing people. The cruise ship lines, the most guilty of anybody bringing 15 and 20,000 people a day to flood a city and then have them leave again, not spending any time, just rampaging through the city and taking off again. That is the problem. All right, guys, so let's take a real world look at an example of why it's hard to make real money, a real return on doing a property here as an investment property. So let's talk about the big bulky expenses. Let's say, for example, that you have $1 million apartment and you're going to make $100,000 a year renting it out. Of that $100,000, 18% of it off the top goes to your booking fee. It's 15%, and then you have to pay a VAT tax on top of that. It works out to about 18%. That is with a lot of the booking companies like Booking.com, Airbnb, etc. You also have to pay a flat tax. It's really the most economical tax to pay, but I never ever give tax advice or immigration advice on my channel. I am not telling you that's what you should do, but by and large, that's what everyone does. On your first property, you pay a flat 21% income tax on the gross rental. Now you're thinking to yourself, right? Yeah, but then I get to take off all my deductions. I bought toilet paper and some coffee. I have my management fee. I have this, I have that. No, you don't get to take any deductions. It is off the gross amount and deductions are not allowed. I do believe there's a 5% blanket deduction allowed. But basically, you're paying 21% of your gross rent. You are in business with the Italian government. Now, on top of those two items, the income tax, flat tax, and the booking fee, you also have your management fee. Those three items are going to take up more than 50% of your gross. And some things that you need to remember, you should always estimate that you're going to bring in less rent than you think. On an apartment like this that rents for 500 to 700 euros per night, 100,000 euros is only 200 nights. But 200 nights is more than 50% of the time. We're in dead season right now. We hardly have any renters in our other rentals right now. From November through March, it's pretty dead. And then August is pretty dead too because it's mainly Italian tourists, not so many foreign tourists. So getting 200, 240, 250 nights rented is pretty good. With the booking platforms, you also always have the worry of cancellations. Usually, they will allow people to cancel up to 2 weeks before the reservation is supposed to start. If somebody does that in a good month, like May, June, July, September, October, for this area, you may not be able to get that rented again, and you're going to lose out all that income. Now, again, I'm talking about doing this as a business. I'm not talking about those of you who are thinking, I'm going to buy an apartment, use it when I want, and the rest of the time I'm going to put it on Airbnb. You need to find a good management company that will tell you honestly what the expenses are going to be. I think you may find out that you would be better off renting something that you don't need to have that extra income coming in for. So there you have it. If the apartment is worth $1 million or 800,000, whatever it is, and you're collecting 100,000, but half of your stuff goes to expenses off the top, that means you're only left with 50,000. $50,000 on a $1 million apartment investment, that is your cash that is tied up, is only a 5% return. So unless you're planning on going out and getting financing to run your business, you're going to find out that you're going to get down to the low single digits on your return of investment very quickly when you're doing Italian apartments without doing leverage. Now, for a non-EU member, getting a loan to buy something in Italy is going to be quite the trick. I cannot tell you how many people contact me and say they aren't even able to get a bank account, a checking account opened. Banks don't even want to talk to them about it. It's that difficult to get one. You really have to know somebody. My property manager happens to be the daughter of the ex-bank president where my checking account's at. That's Italy. You got to know somebody that knows somebody. If you think you're going to come over here and get a loan, I can tell you, while not impossible, it's going to be very difficult. Italian banks aren't going to want to lend to you because they don't know you. And American or Canadian or Australian banks aren't going to want to lend you on a property here and try to hold it as collateral because they probably don't have the legal right to, and they don't understand the market. That's why so many people just pay cash. But by paying all cash for a property here, you really make it difficult to have any sort of good return on that investment. A smaller return than you would have, say, just buying a good dividend stock, or maybe even just putting it into a good CD. Now I mentioned, and I want to talk about it real quickly, When you're using something like booking.com, they will actually deduct your income tax due. They're going to take that 21% out before you even pay your taxes. Now, if you're like me and you had more than one property, you pay a flat tax of 21% on your first property, 26% of the gross rental on each additional property that you have. At the end of the year, you'll get a tax credit for what you gave to booking.com or whoever your booking service is. But you may actually even owe more tax than that. Your other option is to take that income and put it as regular income. And you will be able to deduct some items off of that, like interest expense. And this is why I don't get involved with telling you or giving you tax advice. But you don't get to deduct everything. And your tax rate will very quickly rise to 43%. On the federal level. Plus, if you don't pay the flat tax, you'll pay the federal tax and you'll also pay state and municipal taxes in addition to that, which can also be another 2 or 3% total on top of the up to 43%. It gets to be quite expensive. So if the taxes and the booking fee and your management fee, which by the way, I paid about 15% last year in a management fee, I've heard people telling me as much as 30% of a management fee. That was in the town of Lucca, that someone said that's what they were quoted as a management fee. So those expenses are high, but let's talk about what are your other expenses going to be. There are tons of expenses when you're running a property like this. There's the cleaning expense, which hopefully to some degree you can charge a cleaning fee. The biggest expense is laundry. Imagine in a place like my apartment that we used to rent out that sleeps 10 people, up to 10 people. That's 10 big towels, 10 medium towels, 10 washcloths, 3 floor mats. It's all the sheets, all the duvet covers, top sheets, bottom sheets, pillowcases. Each bed had 4 pillows on it. It was hundreds of dollars for every turn because each piece of laundry is somewhere between $1.50, €1.50, and €3, €4 to get cleans. And if you're renting an apartment like this, you're not going to ask people to please strip the beds and throw everything into the laundry machine. One thing, it isn't going to fit, probably not in 4 loads. And 2, you don't have people renting an apartment that's super nice and ask them to do the laundry. I never stay in an Airbnb or booking.com type property, a nightly rental, where people are expecting me to do the laundry for them. I'm on vacation. That's your job. Don't ask me to do it. There's all sorts of maintenance that you're going to have to worry about. There's, for example, in this building, we have basically a modified HOA. If something happens with the roof, we all pay a fair share. If something happens with the common area, we all pay our fair share based on square footage. We might have plumbing issues in here. A split system, an air conditioning system might go out and have to be replaced. Sometimes people damage stuff. All these things have to be taken into consideration because they're ongoing expenses. We have to worry about replacing furniture. It was kind of stupid, we bought 17th or 18th century chairs for in here, and then someone came in and plopped on one and it cracked it. So you have those kind of expenses as well. And of course you have things like marketing expenses. All these things go into running the place, the expenses on the place, utilities, another big one. All of these are going to reduce your end return on your investment. I didn't want to make this video seem negative. I was trying to explain from my perspective, with my business plan, what happened with our idea of running a rental business here in Italy. Cap rates are very low in Italy. Appreciation is very difficult to come by. There's not going to be a lot of upside on the property you buy unless you happen to buy very, very smartly. Italy also has a very low birth rate, about 1.4. For every 2 people that die in Italy, only 1.4 new babies are made to replace them. That is a very drastic reduction in the population that is going on here. So you have to be very careful where you're buying and what you're buying. I really worry about people that have the idea to buy an apartment in some little town that no one's ever heard of and try turning it into an Airbnb. Even in a very busy town like where I live, we still have a fair number of vacancies on our apartments. I can only imagine what it would be like in a small town like that. So please be very careful. The whole idea behind my channel is to make sure people don't just throw money away. I'm never here to tell you what you should do, but I'm here to warn you about what you better not do. One of the main reasons I started my channel was because I wanted to help people. I don't have a course to sell you. I have no skin in the game, as they say, for what you're planning to do. I'm not making any big commissions on things that people are buying. I have my channel, I have my views, I get a little money from YouTube, and my book's on Amazon. By the way, have you bought my book on Amazon? Anyway, there's a QR code. You can buy my book on Amazon. It'll help you a lot, I think. It's $19 well spent. But really, I just want to make sure people aren't throwing their money away. And I want you to learn from things that I've done and at least understand what I went through, because it may give you an idea for what you're planning to do. So in the end, guys, I just want to say I'm super happy we live here. Oli and I live a life, my wife Olivia and I, we live a life that we could only dream of had we stayed in the United States because of the cost of living there. One of the main reasons I decided to turn this into our full-time home was because we own it. We don't have a mortgage. It is the first time in my life, my adult life, that we didn't either have a mortgage or paying rent somewhere, because we were always upgrading. And money was cheap, and we're always upgrading. There is an amount of freedom when you own your place free and clear. There is an extra amount of freedom when you are smart enough to move to a place like Italy that doesn't make you pay a 2% tax on the house that you already own every single year as property tax. We pay 0 here because this is our primary residence. No mortgage, no rent, no property tax, and our health care is $3,000 a year for both of us. Do we pay income tax? Yes, but we pay a fair share less in income tax and total expenses for all these things than we did when we lived in the United States. So you're definitely on the right path by moving to Italy. Just be careful when you want to get into the rental business and make sure you have your numbers down very, very tight. Okay? That's all I got for today. Olivia says hi. She didn't think this would be fun at all. I thought it was great. And I'm glad you guys joined me for it. I hope you watched the whole thing. If you ever have a simple question, write me. bradsworld8@gmail.com. I'm happy to answer a question like, hey, who's your lawyer? Or who's your accountant? Something like that. If you want me to plan out your whole move, explain the whole process, hold your hand on buying a property, that's a whole different conversation. But anyway, if you have a quick question, let me know. I'm always happy to help you guys. If you ever see us here in Montepulciano when you visit, please say hi. We really do like meeting you guys. I've had people say they didn't want to bug us. It's never a bother. Just don't come to our house. But it's never a bother. If you see us on the street, please come say hi. Hopefully we have time to get a coffee or a glass of wine with you, all right? I'm out. Bye. Ciao.